Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. We're going to be focusing on fragrances that are mostly woody. This is part of a series of videos that I've done this fall that feature fragrances, smells, scents that remind us of the season, that are seasonally appropriate. I've done a gourmand series with one focused on coffee, another video focused on chocolate, another video focused on caramel and honey. And I recently did a warm and spicy video, and by the time you see this video, I will have posted a tobacco fragrances video as well. So we're going to do woody fragrances today. But before we do, I'm hoping you can tell us in the comments what your favorite woody fragrance is. And if you're not sure, why don't you tell us a fragrance you think you might be interested in trying? And I encourage others in the comments to help out if you've tried that fragrance. Weigh in and help our friends out here decide whether it's a fragrance that they should try or not. So let's jump into this. I'm going to kick off with what I think is a hidden gem and one that deserves to be talked about more on YouTube. I don't hear very many people at all talking about it. Estee Lauder Sensuous. This is one that I've worn for quite a while. This is a second bottle of it, and I have Sensuous Nude that I recently got a hold of again. Another conversation for another day on Sensuous Nude, but let's focus. That one has a coconut note that's really interesting. Let's focus on this one, which is what I think is an easy to wear woody fragrance. It's not overpowering, it's not strong, it has decent projection and decent longevity, but after a while it does stay closer to the skin. It has a really soft, easy woodiness to it with soft edges. It's not, some woody fragrances can be a little bit sharp, a little bit difficult to handle, even though it's mostly associated with sandalwood. Santal 33, for example, is a fragrance that I think can be a little bit sharp for people. This one here, and it does have sandalwood too, but it has some notes in it that provide some softness. So there's a honey accord in here, as well as some florals. The florals you don't really get much in here. It's mostly this soft, sensuous wood fragrance with some sandalwood and a little bit of sweetness to balance it out and keep it from leaning too masculine. To me, this is a unisex fragrance that leans ever so slightly in the feminine direction versus some of the other fragrances that we're going to talk about today that are unisex and lean masculine or purely in the masculine category. But this is a hidden gem of a fragrance and one that I think is worth checking out. Sensuous. Fragrance that may be controversial to include in a woody fragrance video, but to me there's enough woodiness in here that I wanted to include it, especially as an option that's more on the feminine side. It's C by Armani. This is the original, and I remember the thing about this is most people think of this as a fragrance that is mostly like in the black currant berry direction. So this has a prominent cassis note in it, which is, I believe, either the leaf or the bud of the black currant plant. So there is some of that berry sweetness in here, although I get a little bit of greenness from that more than anything else. But the reason that this to me smells like a woody fragrance is because I associate it with the time that I smelled it on a friend of mine. We were going out to dinner and she walked in front, and I remember thinking, what? Wow, she smells fantastic. What is that? And she said it was C. And it was the first time that I had noticed this on anyone. And it smelled woody to me at the time. So deeper into the dry down, there was like a patchouli woodiness to this. You still get some of that berry, but a nice sweet woodiness in here that, again, this is a perfectly, in my mind, unisex fragrance leaning in the feminine direction, but a beauty that leaves a really nice scent trail. By the way, although this is not a video about berry fragrances, if you have not tried the new C Intense, the new one in a similar bottle, it is fantastic. The one that's in the black bottle, I'm not that crazy about. In fact, I sold that. It was okay. There was something in there strange, but that new C Intense is fantastic. Highly, highly feminine, intoxicating, and just almost like a super feminine take on this. So check that out. But anyway, the original C is also rather beautiful and a nice berry-like sweet patchouli woody fragrance. Another woody fragrance for those of you that like perfumes that have a more feminine spin to them, especially since we're talking about a traditionally masculine category, woody fragrances, I will put out there Majestic Woods from Juicy Couture. I really do like this funky bottle. People have all sorts of opinions about the Juicy Couture line. whatever. I really like this fragrance. It's definitely woody. It has ambroxan too, which gives it like this amber and musk sort of feel to it. There is a sweetness here from praline and tonka. Now the praline and the tonka are not super pronounced. I would say they're super subtle and give this a little bit of roundness and a hint of sweetness so that it doesn't lean in the masculine direction. I like this fragrance also because it has really great, I think, longevity, very decent projection. And listen, you get a fabulous bottle, and it's on the more affordable side. I think you can find this bottle in the $50 to $60 range, maybe even less if you hunt it down on the discount sites. Now this has amber in it as well, and I could have put it in the amber video, but it really does lean more woody to me than anything else. And you'll see one of its ambery cousins in the amber video coming up. So Majestic Woods, definite thumbs up. A fragrance most people would not expect to find in a woody video, but I have it among my woody fragrances because I feel like it dries down in that direction more than anything else, is the fabulous one and only Chanel Coco Noir. I could have easily put this in my warm and spicy video because it does have a lot of warmth and a lot of spiciness, particularly in the beginning of the fragrance and into the dry down period. And some of that spiciness stays throughout. I would consider that spiciness the quintessential DNA of the Chanel house. I don't know what it is and I don't know how to describe it, but if you understand Chanel fragrances and have lived around them, like I have, like my aunts, my mom, most of the women in my life have worn Chanel for forever. You just know it when you smell it. I don't know how to describe it. It's the Chanel DNA. But what I will say about this fragrance is that in addition to being the warm and spicy classic Chanel thing, as it dries down, it also has this really rich woodiness to it. So there's patchouli and there's sandalwood in here. And I'm wondering if that is combining to give us the sense of woodiness in the base here. I think this is an opulent, beautiful, special occasion fragrance. I wear this every day, whenever I want to, all 4 seasons. But if I had to give it a category, I would say that this is the kind of fragrance that really shines at night. It even has this little hint in the background, like ever so slight musky powderiness that is just so elegant and beautiful. I don't know, this is a hard fragrance to describe, and it's a mature fragrance. I don't think this is a fragrance for people that like more youthful scents. You have to really like those kind of grown women smells. You know, the smell that you get when you like, your auntie hugs you and you know, you're at like bosom level. So your face is like squished up into their chest area because that's where they sprayed their fragrances back in the 80s, 90s. And sometimes it was something like this, something in the Coco range or the Chanel family in general. So anyway, Coco Noir, I think of as a warm and spicy woody fragrance, and that's why it's here. I've been experimenting a little bit more with independent, smaller brands just to kind of expand my olfactive horizons. And I came across Sucreabeille, and this is Strangeling from that line. I also have Oudling. First of all, let's take a good look at the artwork on here. It's a woman holding what looks like an opossum, or is it a raccoon? I think it's an opossum. Really interesting artwork. And the fragrance in here is a fun little number. It's mostly, it has a lot of vanilla, but there is a rosewood note in here. There's like a white chocolate, there's a cognac, so it's boozy and it's sweet. And for me, it's sitting on this bed of a really soft woodiness. Now, the cousin of this, Oudling, has coconut in it. I still, even though this doesn't have coconut, for me, it feels like there's a bit of a coconut in here. It's an earthier version of Oudling, if you will. Definitely a woodiness in here that I think is romantic, and it's fun and it's soft and it's playful and it's nicely balanced with the booziness and the vanilla, and certainly worth trying out. Now I will say, for an indie fragrance and for it to be a tiny, I think this is a 1 ounce. Are you a 1 ounce? I think it's a 1 ounce. It's about $60. So I think that's a little bit on the pricey side. That's okay. I think it's worth it and worth trying out, as is Oudling, its cousin. Now, if you like Sensuous 33, but you want something a little bit softer, perhaps that whole like pickle thing that other people pick up. I don't pick up the pickle thing. That's a tongue twister. I don't pick up the pickle thing. Other people do. I guess if I like strain long and hard enough, I can imagine how Sensuous 33 smells pickle-ish, like pickle juice or whatever. But I enjoy Sensuous 33. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance. and it does lean a little bit masculine. If you're looking for something like that, but Santal 33 is maybe a little too much for you, you may want to try Tory Burch Knock on Wood. I do love this bottle. I love the color of it. This has a strong citrus, like a sharp citrus in it from a blood orange note. And there's a rose note in here as well that I think is sharp as well. And then it's mostly a woody fragrance. I think this is one of the most beautiful woody fragrances I have because there's a pureness to this. So whereas Strangeling has vanilla in it and it has the cognac and all of that sort of balances out on the bed of woodiness, this is mostly woody through and through with a little bit of that citrus, as I mentioned, and some rose around the edges to make it an interesting composition. But the heart of this fragrance, the main body of it, is through and through a pure woody fragrance. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's sophisticated. I think it has great projection, great longevity. You're going to smell unique if you wear this, and you'll have this beautiful bottle to look at. This next one is part of the Michael Kors Shimmer line. There are 4 in that line, and I want to feature Mystique Shimmer. There's also Midnight Shimmer, which has a lot of vanilla in it, and it's woody also, but I think I would save that for more of a vanilla video. I wanted to feature Mystique Shimmer because it's a little bit more interesting than Midnight Shimmer in terms of being a woody fragrance. These bottles are just so cool with the glittery part on top and the ombre effect. Anyhow, you can still find these at the cosmetics company store if you have those near you, and they're certainly out on the gray market. So if you want to Google Michael Kors Shimmer Eau de Parfum, you can find which of the 4 are available online. So woodiness, saffron, there's a pepperiness in here, a little bit of spice, very long lasting and has good moderate projection. And I just really enjoy these bottles. I find these to be affordable gems that got a lot of hype a little while back and then people sort of forgot about them, but they're absolutely worth checking out. The next fragrance I would consider a bit of a hidden gem, actually a lot of a hidden gem. I don't hear anyone talking about it, and I think it's worth trying out if you like deep, mysterious fragrances. This one would be a great evening fragrance. It is, and forgive me if I don't pronounce the name right, I know this company as like a shoe and purse company, Aigner, Debut by Night. A woody fragrance that has, I would say, some deep, fruity aspects to it, and I would say deep in the berry direction. There's even a pear note in here. There's patchouli, there's a rosiness. I featured this in a reel of hidden gems, fragrances that no one talks about on Instagram. But I really enjoy this. I think it's very much worth checking out if you don't mind hunting down a bottle of this. I mean, you're not going to find it, I don't think, at Macy's or whatever. You'll have to look online, Google it, and see where on the gray market this fragrance is. But nice, long-lasting, projecting, really interesting. My husband loves this. I think this is one that men in general would probably gravitate to. It's different, it's unique, it's mysterious. It has a dark gothic edge to it that I really like, yet is feminine and pretty and heavily woody also. I have yet another gem to share with you in the woody category. It's also like sandalwood. So sandalwood and woodiness go together, right? But I could definitely do like a separate complete sandalwood fragrance video. And in fact, I did one last winter, and I think I'll do an updated one probably in December or January-ish. So sandalwood video coming up. But this is Reveal from Calvin Klein. Another gem of a fragrance, absolutely affordable. I think it's out on the gray market for anywhere from $25 to $35, somewhere in that range. In case you're wondering what this quirky bottle looks like, it sits like that, and that's the fragrance, right? But you sit it on its side. This is pepper on top of pepper on top of pepper. If you like pepperiness in your fragrance, you're in luck because you're going to get a lot of that in here. That sandalwood, which gives it the woodiness. There's a muskiness in here. There's a suede-like quality, and there's a beautiful iris note sort of in the background, but prominent enough that you get it. It's not in the far distance. It's just hovering in the background like a supporting player with its hands on the shoulders of the sandalwood and the pepper, kind of cheering them on and pushing them forward. I think this is a lovely fragrance. It performs really well on my skin. It's one of those fragrances that meshes nicely with my skin chemistry, and it is a fragrance that could potentially not mesh well with yours. So, but I would say this, at the price tag for $30-ish, somewhere, you know, in that range, you can try it if you like sandalwood and you like peppery fragrances and you like the idea of like a musky suedeness with that cold iris note in the background. I think this is a beauty of a fragrance. One woody fragrance in my collection that smells different than everything else that I'm going to share with you today. I mean, all of these fragrances are a little bit different one from the next in their own way, right? But this one in particular stands out to me as a crowd fave in that when I put this on, there's always a compliment to be had from hubby, from the kids. And if I happen to go out somewhere, I don't get a lot of compliments when I'm out in public. Probably because I run in and out of places as quickly as possible. Like, I work from home, and so for me to be hanging out in public is unusual. I'll go to the supermarket, you know, I'll go run errands, but I'm out and back in as soon as possible because I'm a homebody. Probably too much information for you, but there you go. Qasamat Rasana from Rasasi is a gem of a fragrance. This has a prominent apple note in it that is really bright and uplifting and refreshing, particularly at the opening. It has a zinginess from some citrus notes in there, and it has this beautiful, sophisticated cedar note. There's something about this that smells, and again, you know how I feel about saying this, but I'm going to say it, expensive, refined, elegant, different, elevated, fantastic. Some people have compared this to Aventus Creed for her. There are strong similarities, but this is definitely a fragrance on its own. I find that the apple in here and the brightness of the citrus is a little bit more unique and different than you get in Aventus. There's something in Aventus that's a little bit slightly annoying for me, Aventus for her. This one does not annoy me at all, nor anyone around me, and it's affordable, and I think just a fantastic fragrance. Definitely one that would be great for office settings if you spray super lightly, and an absolute special occasion fragrance if you spray more heavily and you want to stand out from the crowd and have a unique edge and smell like something other than the typical floral or, you know, fruity fragrances or super sweet fragrances that most women would be wearing at a special occasion. This one would have a little bit more edge to it. Do I think that this leans masculine? I would say for those of you that like feminine fragrances, this may not be for you. I think that does have some masculinity to it, although I would call this a squarely unisex fragrance. For those of you that like a good date note in a fragrance, I present from Nobile 1942, Castelli di Sabbia. I enjoy this fragrance on days that I want to smell woody and sweet and fruity and musky, but not in a super strong way. I don't find these fragrances to be overpowering or beast mode. I find them to have a fairly close to the body, I wouldn't say intimate sillage, I would say, and projection, I would say sort of arm's length at the most. So a little bit more subtle in that sense. This is a musky date fragrance with some woodiness in it, and a very distinct spiciness from cardamom in here. So this could have been in my warm and spicy fragrance video as well, but I detect the woodiness in here as a main player more so than the warm and the spicy, although those are in there and prominent too. So it could have gone either way, but I wanted it here because I enjoy the woodiness in here probably the most of the notes. But if you are that person that likes date, that is pronounced in here as well. I feel indifferent about date. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't seek it out. It does add this sort of like syrupy sweetness in my mind to this with the spicy cardamom and the beautiful woody base to this. Next is a fragrance that I find to be highly addictive, really intoxicating and interesting. I will say as a warning, some folks really hate this. They are like actually repulsed by it, but I adore it. And I think it recently became available on the US discounter websites. So go check this out. Stash by Sarah Jessica Parker. It was really hard to find here in the States for a while, and people were selling it on eBay and Mercari for fairly exorbitant prices. So, and then it was available overseas for like super cheap. So anyway, check this out. I think it's also available on fragrancebuy.ca. This is like the quintessential boyfriend fragrance, as I call it. It is that smell of a guy after he comes in from being outside for a while. Maybe he was doing a little bit of physical labor, but not enough to get stinky, but enough for like his natural scent to begin to emit from his skin. And he's got a flannel shirt on. He's not stinky and sweaty. He's just cozy and delicious. Smells like outdoors. Smells a little bit like a church. Smells a little bit like his masculine deodorant. Smells a lot like his natural skin scent. That is what I get out of here. There's sage in here, so there's a little bit of an aromatic quality. There's a pistachio note, and there's several different kinds of wood, and I think a little patchouli as well. Super interesting fragrance, and it smells beautiful from the nozzle and then transforms even further on your skin into this really gorgeous, slightly masculine leaning scent. So again, for those of you that like feminine leaning fragrances, not for you. For those of you that are a little bit more adventurous and want a unique smell, I have not smelled anything else out there on the market that smells like Stash. It's that unique to me. So absolutely one of my most unique fragrances, and I find it intoxicating and I can't get enough. I'll talk next about a fragrance that is absolutely woody, but people mostly associate with summer because of its name, and I have been guilty of doing the same. But I have it, when I rearranged my shelves, it was very clear to me that this fragrance belonged with its woody brothers and sisters and cousins, and it is the gorgeous Beach Hut from Amouage. If you've tried Amouage fragrances, you know that they're rather challenging. In fact, this is one of very few that I have actually enjoyed from the line, although I think a lot of the fragrances are fascinating, really complex. Some of them, I'm just not woman enough to wear some of those Amouage fragrances. They wear me, they carry me off, and I kind of need my feet planted firmly on the ground. First of all, the bottle is so stinking cute with the magnetized caps and all of that. This is a heavily woody fragrance. I associate this with the way that the peeling wood off of a coconut tree smells. If you've been to the beach and you have been around the stuff that falls off of a coconut tree, like the husky parts, and it heats up in the sun, it emits that super woody smell. That's a little bit of what I get from here. There are mineral notes in here that remind you of some of what the ocean air smells like this saltiness with minerals in the air. There's a soft cashmere note. Now, I did this reel on Instagram that was intended to be funny, and it's me smelling driftwood because that's the woody note that's in here, and trying to figure out what the heck does driftwood smell like. If you've smelled driftwood on the beach, it has a little bit of a woody smell to it, but for the most part, it doesn't smell like anything. But that is mostly because you're also smelling everything else at the beach, like the ocean air and all of that, and that kind of blocks out what driftwood smells like. And driftwood is a bit of a fantasy note, right? But think about like a salty woodiness. That's what you get out of here. I think that this transforms even further on the skin. Like, it smells fantastic out of the nozzle, but on the skin, it really dances and becomes super sophisticated and fabulous. This is an elegant fragrance. I will say that when I first tried it, I wasn't into it. I was like, this is weird. Why do people like this? And then I wore it, and then I was like, oh, I understand the magic of it. It's a really interesting, unique, and different fragrance like Stash. I don't have anything else in my collection that smells like this. That says a lot. This next one does lean fully masculine, and it is a dupe for Straight to Heaven from Klein, and it's called Woody Rum. Now, this one puts the notes right on there, so without guessing, you get rum and fruits and nutmeg at the top. So there's this boozy spiciness to it. There's cedarwood. It says vanilla. I don't get a lot of like sweetness from vanilla, and then amber and sandalwood. I find this to be a spicy, dry, woody fragrance that's boozy as well. If you like that kind of thing, sort of like in the direction of Replica Jazz Club, not quite as spicy as that one. It doesn't have the tobacco. This is more just like spice and some booze and like a dry woodiness to it. If that sort of thing appeals to you, check out this alternative, which I think is in like the $29 range on the Dossier website. I forgot to say that. This is from Dossier, and it's called Woody Rum, and it's a heck of a lot less expensive than the Klein version of Straight to Heaven. I have 4 more fragrances, and I will just say outright that these 4, to me, lean in the masculine direction. They are perfectly wearable by women, in my opinion, but then again, I like a wide range of fragrances, from the most girly feminine fragrances all the way to the most masculine heavy fragrances that women wouldn't dare wear. So I like the whole range, and just keep that in mind as I describe these. So that said, let's talk about Moonlight Shadow from Prada. It has on here fig as the primary note. So I think that this could have been a leather fragrance. Like, I could put this in a leather fragrance video, which is also coming up. I did a leather fragrance video last winter, and I will update it with some new ones this winter. Anyway, yes, there's a beautiful, soft, suede leather in here, a really nice, pleasant fig note that isn't too sweet or too dry or anything, just a nice fig. There's also like a dry cacao in here and this beautiful cedar that to me sits underneath the composition and boosts it up, which is why I would call this as woody a fragrance as it is leathery, and I thought it was worth mentioning in this video. I really do like these bottles. They look like they're opaque, but they're not. Like if you hold them up to the light, you can see through them. Anyway, beautiful fragrance. This whole line is fabulous, by the way. Then I'll share with you a woody fragrance that I find really beautiful, but I think is super challenging to wear. I've worn it several times now, and then the last time that I wore it, I made the mistake of heavily overspraying myself and jumping in the bed and nearly choking myself out that night because it is a pretty strong fragrance. So if you want to try this, go lightly. It's Amouage's White Hinoki. Love the bottle. Nice, hefty, sturdy bottle. The Hinoki in here is prominent. Hinoki is a type of wood. It has a zestiness to it that comes across a little bit citrusy. There's a slight sharpness to the wood too. It's like a freshly cut pine. Like if you think about pine and juniper in the forest with some hints of citrus on it, that's kind of how I would describe what Hinoki wood smells like specifically. There's ginger in here and there's a little bit of booziness from, I think it's a rum note. And tobacco's listed in the note structure. I can't detect that. So I would say it's mostly like that bright, zesty Hinoki with some spiciness from the ginger and a little slight hint of booziness. I find this to be an elegant, sophisticated fragrance that I would think would be a very unique special occasion fragrance. Very masculine, okay? So just take note of that. And not one to be played with. This is a serious fragrance. Like you need to mean to wear this when you put it on because it is pretty strong. But I think it is gorgeous and unique and worth checking out. I have a dedicated review on this next fragrance, but I did that review well over a year ago. I wonder how I would describe it today if I just did a dedicated review. But here's a little glimpse into what it might sound like. This is from La Yucawam line from Rasasi, and it's called Orchid Prairie Perfumes. This to me, so I described it one way in that dedicated video. As I'm sniffing it again, and it's also well over a year older, this fragrance, so it has mellowed out even more, marinated in its own juices even more. I would say this is something like a really soft version of Mugler's Alien mixed with Black Orchid from Tom Ford. Like if those two got together and had a very low-key, subdued party on some psychedelics or something, this might be what they envision. Isn't that weird? Okay, like if those two fragrances, Alien and Black Orchid, had a really low-key party out in the woods, and they found like a rotting log that had fallen over, a tree that had fallen over, and they were sitting on there contemplating life together. Those smells all mixed together might be a little bit of what this smells like. My short version is it smells like a deep, dark grape juice was poured over rotting wood. And I like it. It kind of works. I know that sounds super gross and disgusting, but there's something really wonderful about it. This meshes nicely with my skin chemistry. It's a deep, dark, woody, grapey, even ambery. There's no amber listed in the notes, but there's actually like carnation and rose and some other notes that I just don't pick up. This is like a sweet, rotting wood to me. I like that smell with like a grapiness, and I really like it. I really like it. Orchid Prairie. A winner, and it lasts forever, by the way. It lasts forever on the skin and projects. Maybe this next one belongs in an oud video, but we're going to talk about it here. Burch Lamasat Oud. I love the whole Burch line. Recently have discovered that they're actually dupes for other fragrances, and that's the case with a number of Middle Eastern fragrances that have flooded the US market, and I'm cool with that. This one in particular, we all have recently discovered, is a dupe for oud wood. I never picked that up because I've never smelled oud wood from Tom Ford. Have I? I might have had a decant a long time ago, but certainly I don't remember what it smells like, if I did. But anyway, this has oud, obviously, and it has gaiac wood and cedar in it and patchouli, and it's musky too. So this is one of those fragrances that I think would be fairly off-putting for most ladies, but fabulous for most gentlemen or for people that are adventurous. Those of you that like Tom Ford's more masculine leaning fragrances, here you go. I find the entire line, the whole Barouge line, to be really, really good. The only one I didn't really love so much was called, I think, Spiritus, the one that's in the silvery gray bottle. I have that one up for sale on my Mercari. I figured out that it was a dupe for Creed Aventus, the male version, which I think smells nice, but I don't always want to smell like that. I didn't gravitate toward it, although I would wear it. I've worn it twice, and my husband didn't really care for it. So, you know, that being what it is, I ended up putting it up on Mercari, but I still have all the others from the Barouge line. This one here, if this is what Tom Ford's Oud Wood smells like, then Oud Wood smells fabulous. Obviously, very woody, a touch of oudiness and a touch of patchouli, but I think sort of like a really pure woody smell, like wood that's been chopped and you go to smell the inside of it. That's what this reminds me of. We're going to pause right there for the sake of time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this lineup. Were there any surprises here? Were there any that you just knew were going to be in this video? And please don't forget to drop your favorite woody fragrances down below so that we can be nosy and check out your choices. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, my friends.